Is the History Channel doing history again? Maybe, and why that matters, this week on Come On Now. Is the History Channel actually doing history again? Maybe. Most of the time, when you turn on the History Channel, you're not actually getting history anymore, and that's been true for a long time. Instead of getting history, you're getting lots of monsters.
The Pacific Northwest may be home to an extraordinary beast.
When you're not getting monsters, you're getting lots of the Bermuda Triangle.
1,000 miles southwest to Florida. You go about 1,000 miles over to Puerto Rico, and then you go back 1,000 miles north to Bermuda. That is almost a perfect isosceles triangle.
And when you're not getting the Bermuda Triangle, you're getting aliens.
For centuries, visitors to the Mediterranean island of Sardinia have been greeted with strange and mysterious stories that a race of giants once lived there thousands of years ago.
In fact, if you turn on the History Channel just about any time of day or night, you're getting lots and lots of aliens.
This is it, Giorgio. One of the many Benben stones or pyramidions inside the museum.
Look at it. It's absolutely magnificent. And it's perfect.
And at other times, you may get cars, you may get pawn shops, you may get American pickers, all of which sort of tangentially touches history, but it isn't really history. Now, early on in History Channel's days, they actually showed a lot of history. In fact, they showed so much history, and it was all footage of Hitler, that people started naming them the Hitler Channel, which actually makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because there is footage of Hitler doing evil things. There is no footage of Napoleon doing evil things. So they showed what they had. Times have moved forward, of course, and now there's reality TV, and History Channel completely got away from doing history. But strange thing has happened. Over the past few weeks, the History Channel has started airing a show about history. Now, before I get into that, I want to give you my bona fides on history. I'm not just some bloviating talking head here. I mean, I am that, but I'm more. I majored in history, and I've actually done history professionally. Now, that doesn't mean I'm a historian, but I have done history professionally. Take a look at this.
March 6th will mark the 181st anniversary of the fall of the Alamo. As usual, plenty of activities are taking place to commemorate the historic event. But if you plan on visiting the Alamo tomorrow, you're going to find a new exhibit. Justin Horn gives us a sneak peek inside Jim Bowie, man, knife, legend.
Kind of amazing, isn't it? This knife has been famous since 1827.
Legendary, in fact. Used in an infamous brawl in Natchez, Mississippi, both the knife and its namesake would become household names.
Ever since then, Jim Bowie was famous, and his knife was famous with him.
Bowie, of course, would then make his way to defend the Alamo. His legacy and the legacy of his weapon of choice cemented in the history books.
Even now, the Jim Bowie knife, the Bowie knife resonates in pop culture. You see it in Indiana Jones. You see it in Crocodile Dundee and Rambo. You even see it in Rise of the Tomb Raider for Lara Croft. So it's a knife that became iconic in 1827 and remains iconic now.
All of it chronicled in a new exhibit called Bowie, Man, Knife, Legend, set to open at the Alamo.
This exhibit will walk you through the life and times of Jim Bowie. Why did he and his brother move to Texas in 1830, for instance? Who did they meet along the way? Where did he get his knives?
In addition to that history, you'll also find plenty of technology to help tell the story.
This exhibit is interactive. Check it out. You can see the actual artifact, but by using this touchscreen, you can see details you might have otherwise missed.
Set to open Saturday, look for the exhibit to continue through the end of the year. Justin Horn, KSAT 12 News.
So that exhibit, the Bowie Man, Knife, Legend exhibit that we did at the Alamo, I produced and co-wrote, was very successful. We blended technology with history. We got the history right because historians actually wrote the bulk of everything that was there, and I just edited it down to turn it into an exhibit. More than 600,000 people went through that exhibit, which tells me and should tell everyone that people actually do care about real history, and they want to go to real sites to learn about it, and they want to turn on the History Channel and watch history. That's why they turn on that channel. Now, lately, I mentioned that History Channel is doing a history show, and it's actually pretty good. It's called Man vs. History. And the idea of this show is to take a little bit from maybe Man vs. Food, like from the title, but a little bit more from Mythbusters, and then turn that into a show where the host, whose name is Bill Lepp, takes a story from history and puts it to the test, whether it's fact, whether it's fiction, or somewhere in between. In one of the episodes, he took a look at the legend of John Henry. Let's take a look at that.
In my quest for the truth of John Henry, I've come to two conclusions. One, he seems to have been a real guy who worked on the tunnels of the C&O Railroad.
I think John Henry was a real man. He was not a fictional character, and he actually worked driving steel in this tunnel with a sledgehammer.
Now, Mike Hales places John Henry at the Big Bend Tunnel in West Virginia, based on oral history and anecdotal evidence.
Neil Miller was a water carrier, and he explicitly places John Henry here.
Scott Reynolds Nelson says nope. It was the Lewis Tunnel over in Virginia, and he bases that on historical documents he's discovered.
There was no steam drill at the Big Bend Tunnel. I found the engineering records for the C&O Railroad from 1870 and 71. The timing of a person named John Henry and a steam drill at the Lewis Tunnel, that, I think, is the contest.
Recent episodes of Man vs. History have included looking at the Alamo and whether the Alamo defenders were brave, and he ruled that they were, which shouldn't surprise anyone except woke historians who don't understand the meaning of the word brave. He also took a look at the Bowie knife and whether the original maker of one of the original Bowie knives, not the original one, used a meteorite to create the blade. And he found that, maybe not. It's an interesting story. It's not one we covered in the Bowie exhibit that I did, but it's interesting. But here's the importance of this and why this matters. The United States has not done a good job of teaching our history over the past couple of generations. And as a result, woke history is taking over in our schools, in our universities, and even into our corporations and our military. We heard General Mark Milley just a few weeks ago bash American history.
And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets. But I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military.
It's simply unacceptable for America's top soldier to bash American history. Over the next week, we're going to see the Biden administration spin the Afghanistan debacle as the next Berlin airlift. Anyone who knows their history knows what a colossal and cynical lie this is. The Berlin airlift was all about American resolve to resist threats. The Afghanistan debacle is all about one president selfishly pushing optics above everything else. History matters. It's good to see the History Channel actually doing some history again. Hopefully we can learn from all of our history, the good and the bad, and what's happening now. This is history unfolding, and unfortunately, it's one of the worst chapters in American history. Can Joe Biden spin his way out of this? Not if Americans know enough of our history. Come on now. I'm Bryan Preston.